Hey guys, Rudy with Los Locos here. We get a lot of questions in regards to what flies our guests should bring down, and a lot of people like tying their own flies. And honestly, it's one of the only ways to buy or get these flies is to tie your own. We had some different factors in that are very specific to our fishery, and I don't think our market is big enough yet to be able to have a big manufacturer produce these flies. Some things that we try to do in all of our flies, they have three important components. For most streamers that we're tying, there's some variations that we do, but for the most part, the three are actually, with all flies, the biggest and most important component is the hook. We tie these on big, strong hooks. This is an RX SA 270. This is an 8.0 that we'll be tying this fly on. The 6.0 works well too. I don't like going much smaller than a 6.0. It seems to like you lose a lot of fish. So 8.0 or 6.0 and greater. And then another big factor that we have is we put a lot of keels in our flies. So putting tungsten or lead, something heavy on the underside of this shank is going to have this fly sitting right. And this is really important, more so for our fishery and pelagic fisheries in general than a lot of other fisheries, because we're trying to keep up with bait balls, and these bait balls are moving pretty quickly. And when you're doing a double underhand strip and you get a big bow in your line because you're in gear, these flies are gaining a lot of speed, and if they aren't keeled properly, they will spin. So I like to add a tungsten bead in here, but like I mentioned, any weight on the underside will work. And lastly is I make sure that all these flies, they're an appetizing size for these marlin. The marlin aren't going to veer way off a bait ball to eat a small offering. It's very unlikely. So I like to make sure they push a lot of water, so I put a lot of materials in the head and that they're a proper length. I normally tie mine between 8 to 10 inches. It really depends on what materials I'm allowing or using and what they allow, but 8 inches is kind of the standard. If you do want to shorten them up, you can always do that on the water with a pair of scissors, but I normally go on the longer side and yeah, trim them down on the water if I need. But yeah, this is kind of our standard fly. It's pretty not quick, but it's simple, and most people can tie it. It might take a few tries to get perfect, but yeah, it definitely doesn't have to be perfect. These marlin, hopefully, that will put you on, they're pretty crazy, and yeah, they most of the time they'll eat a wet sock. But this is just a quick, easy, durable fly that we kind of been creating for the last like 9 or so years that we've been going down there. So hope this video answers a lot of your questions, and yeah, let's get to tying. We're going to start with an RX SA 270 8.0. You can go down to the 6.0. Once you get lower than that, you do seem to, your hookup to land ratio goes down significantly. So yeah, we're in the business of catching fish, not losing them. So we're going to stick with the 6.0s and greater for the most part on almost all of our marlin flies. So here I'm just wrapping up some Danville 210 flat wax thread up the shank, creating a nice little base here. I do like the flat wax for this step, mainly because it has better grip on the hook than a GSP. I do have a GSP here in case my thread does break. It's a little bit more durable of a thread, but like I said, it slides around the hook shank a little bit. So I like to use this Danville until it breaks, and then I'll switch over to the GSP. Just make sure you have a nice thread base here that won't slide on the hook shank. The gel spun seems to do that a little bit. So I'm going to grab a clump here of some SF blend. I believe this is UV white. They have a ton of different white colors, from bucktail white, UV white, yeah, so any of those will do. Pearl, all those work well, just as long as it's pretty bright and white. That's pretty good there. So what I did there is I grabbed this by the 1/3 point and then folded it back. So you got a smaller, shorter piece here. This is about 1/3 of the length, and then this is about 2/3 of the length of the material there. So you fold it over, you get no waste, you use all your materials, and I think it creates a nice little profile. So now I'm going to grab a little Flashabou. This step isn't mandatory, but I like to throw a good amount of flash in my flies. It's an easy material to cut out when you're out on the water, so if the fish aren't responding to the flash well, you can always trim it out on the water, but it's hard to add it once the fly is already tied. So that was probably like 20 strands or so of this Flashabou. And yeah, that kind of creates a little lateral line that a lot of these sardines have. Next step, we're going to do the same thing with the top color. I like this. I believe it's Calypso Blue or Blue Magic or something. This is actually a Game Changer blend. Most synthetics will work just fine as long as they're stiff enough. So there, I'm tying in about 2/3 of the length here, and I got a 1/3 tag. So yeah, same thing as the bottom, but in reverse. You got a nice long piece in the middle there, and then on the top, you've got a nice little short piece to create that taper once again. So that doesn't have to be pretty. Everything's going to get covered up here. And I like to throw a little bit of super glue on this. Make sure you tie over all the materials. So this style of tying in these materials, I believe, is bullet style, which is kind of like the fold over style and tying over all the materials. It just adds a lot more durability. And yeah, allows you to use the whole length of the materials of synthetics there. So next step, pretty important to prevent fouling when you're out casting at these fish. I like to put a little bit of goop, actually a fair bit of goop on here, and it does reduce your movement, the movement of the fly just a tad bit, but I think the fact it doesn't foul is more important than a little bit of extra movement. When these fish key in on these flies, they're not too picky. So as long as you got these flies to swim the right way and not spin and create a big profile, they're probably going to get eaten. So I'm going to bring that silicone back about 3/4 of an inch. One of the reasons I like this goop stuff is it dries really, really fast. Honestly, it doesn't take much more than a couple minutes. So if I'm tying them one fly at a time, not factory style, I normally use this stuff just because it's quick. And while that's drying, what I like to do is work on my keel. So I'll bring this thread up the hook shank here. Flip this baby upside down. And then I'm going to tie in a piece of 65-pound Power Pro. Any braid will do. I like braid. I've seen a lot of people use mono. Mono works fine. I just like the way that braid lays down. It seems to tie in a little bit nicer than your monos. I like to fold this over once or twice. It seems to add a lot more durability. And I like to bring that Power Pro back up the hook shank about, what is that? About 1/3 of the way back up the hook shank, a little bit less. Actually, right around 1/3. So now I'm going to tie in this bead here. I like these tungsten beads. This was an idea that Paul Sonnen gave us recently, and incorporating beads as opposed to what we've used in the past, which is a lot of lead and or tungsten dumbbell eyes. but these beads they're pretty durable. They hold on to the hook a little bit better than some of the tungsten dumbbells we've used a lot in the past. But any weight on the underside seems to work well. Lead wire on the underside works fine as well. I just really like this tungsten bead. And this is the 5.5 mil tungsten bead. Make sure it's tungsten, not brass. You're looking for density. You're not looking for just mass. And those brass beads just don't seem to create as good of a keel as your tungsten. So yeah, one 5.5 millimeter bead normally does it. If you want to go a little bit heavier, you can go with a couple 4.6s. And once again, I'm just going to fold that over, making this fly bomb-proof. Normally you lose these things after a few fish because people get excited. They stop caring about the fight as much and they just want to jump them. But yeah, it is nice to have a durable fly that will last a few fish. So durability is one of the main things we've looked into or started focusing on with this pattern, and this one is very, very durable. So now this goop is already dry. Again, this stuff dries fast. So I'm ready to do the next step here, and this is an EP sparkle brush, 3 inches. These things, they create a lot of bulk, and yeah, bulk and flash, both things that we're looking for in these flies. I'm going to tie that all the way back. And I'm going to work this about halfway between the tail here and this bead. And this is going to be my second clump of synthetics that I put in. And before I do that, I like to put a little bit of super glue over all the thread that you're going to be going over. And while I'm at it, I might as well cover these wraps of Power Pro, just to secure that keel in. But this super glue, it gets a lot better grip on the materials, or on the thread and on the hook of the shank, and creates a lot more of a durable fly. So bring that up. For smaller flies, medium-sized flies, you can normally get away with using about one of these. For the bigger 8-0s per fly, for the bigger 8-0s, I normally use about 1.5 of the whole brushes. So trim off that excess there, save that for a minute. You can keep that tied in. Just gonna brush this out. Make sure nothing's getting trapped in that super glue. Alright, so now I'm going to grab the same synthetics we did earlier, some more SF blend, and this is going to be your smallest clump. So you don't need too much. You're just trying to cover up some of that body. I'm going to fold this SF blend right in half there at this stage, and then just trim that. And then I'm going to taper all the ends here. I normally go pretty aggressive on this taper. You do want some longer fibers just to create a better taper. So that's pretty good there. I'm going to tie these kind of at an angle, so it's pointing this way, and then fold them back so they're both covering the sides. It's not just on the bottom. So there, and then fold this to this side here. I don't find it too important on the second step and third step, but on this step I like to do kind of cover the sides rather than the bottom. It just prevents fouling a little bit. Okay, now I'm going to grab that Game Changer blend again. First clump again, you don't have to go overboard. This fly is pretty simple, as I've mentioned, but something that people normally run into, or problems that people normally run into when they're first tying them, is getting the portions right. So a lot of the times you'll, at the end of your first couple of these, you'll have a really big head or a really big tail, or yeah, it just doesn't look quite right. So um, it'll take a few practice tries, but it doesn't take too long to get this fly pretty dialed in. So now tie in that top material, fold it back, tie that in. Make sure it's exactly how you like it. Boom. Let's get that combed up. I'm gonna do the same step again here, and this time you're just gonna work that EP brush up to the bead there. I'm gonna use that same brush we just had. Tie this in. While that glue's still wet there. Wrap this EP sparkle brush up the shank. Comb everything out there. Boom. Now it's starting to build a good bit of bulk here. Start to see the body of this fly building. Same step as before. Gonna grab some more SF blend for the underside. This time I'm gonna grab a little bit more materials than the last one, and you're just gonna slowly build more bulk as you move forward. Hello, scissors down. Yeah, as I was saying, you want a little bit more bulk on the front of the head and less on the tail. The head is going to be where you push most of the water, or the fly pushes most of the water, so you want a fair bit of materials in there. But this one's, as you see, is a little bit more than the last, but still not an overwhelming amount. And I'm going to do the same thing for the top color again. Should a little bit more. Fold it in half. Knocking everything down. All right. Get that to where you want it. Fold everything back. A couple loose wraps, make sure it's sitting where you want her. Tie her in. So now, put some more glue over everything there. I'm going to tie in a fresh piece of this EP sparkle brush. Tie it in behind the bead. Then I'm going to work this towards the eye there. Covering that bead. Now, giving yourself just enough space to tie in some more synthetics. Oh, there it goes, thread down. So now I'm going to switch over to this GSP. Something to watch out for, one of the reasons I like to have this GSP handy is this dubbing brush. These dubbing brushes, they do have some sharp edges and they will cut your thread a fair bit. So that's why I have this GS piece on standby. Seems to be a little bit more durable with the dubbing brushes, but you don't have to put a ton of pressure on any of these materials, so that Danville will work most of the time. So one last time, I am going to grab some more white SF, hold this over, and this is, again, more materials than the last clump. Now, I'm going to tie half this going forward, right on the underside, half of them going back. Make sure that's where you want it. And one last time, same with the blue. With these synthetics, it's really easy to blend materials, and it's actually pretty fun to do. Changing up materials, you get a lot of different colors. I've got some darker blues I've been mixing in with these, and they look pretty good. I don't think it's too important for the fish, but for the fisherman, it always gives a little bit more confidence, and confidence is key. Bam. All right. So, last clump, I'm going to put it on top there. Put all those materials right where you want them. Once those are good, fold everything back. And you can do the same bullet tie that we were doing earlier. This last step, it just looks a little bit cleaner if you tie right in front of them. It's more of a hollow style. I am going to wrap over the materials themselves, so it's not true hollow style, but yeah, it just seems to give a cleaner head than just tying bullet style and then trying to fill all the gaps. There it is. Yeah, so I just like to build a little bit of a dam there, and then tie over the materials just a little bit. And then grab my whip finisher, which I dropped a second ago. Do a couple whip finishes. Whoop. Hello. I normally like to do a handful just because these marlin bills, they are quite abrasive. Oop. And yeah, it's a pain when these things start unraveling. So I do a lot of these things just so you have extra protection when these things start unraveling out in the water. You can only get one more fish out of them. It's always pretty sad. So here, I'm gonna add some more super glue. A lot of super glue goes into this fly. Try to do it in a well ventilated area. Or don't. And so, last step. Again, not mandatory, but adds confidence for the fisherman, and I think it adds a little bit of durability. I'm going to put some flat I believe these are 3/8 inch prism eyes Put a little super glue. I like this gel super glue. It's got a little bit better control. And then I'm just going to put that right where I want it. One of the reasons I like to put these eyes on, you're just putting super glue on the shank of the hook and over materials. And again, durability is key. This thing is designed to be bomb-proof, so more super glue, the better. Do the same thing for the other side. I do like the flat eyes over the 3D eyes that a lot of people use, the ones that have a little bit of plastic on them. These guys, they seem to sit in the materials a little bit better. And the 3D eyes, they work great, but if you lose the coating or you lose one of the whole eyes, the one side's going to create drag, the other won't, and that, believe it or not, even the eye, especially because it's out of the front of the hook, it does create a lot of drag over one side of the eye, and that will spin it. So I like to use these flat ones. They just seem to tuck into the materials a little bit better, and if you do lose one, it doesn't affect the fly that much. I don't have an eye. But here we are. That's the completed marlin fly right there, guys. Pretty simple. Uses a lot of materials. Takes about 15-20 minutes once you get her dialed in. And you can change it up a lot. You can put some epoxy on the head. I'm not a huge fan of the epoxy. I think it decreases your hook gap a little bit. But it looks nice, makes it a little bit more durable. You can change up the materials like we mentioned earlier, go crazy with it. Just make sure you got this big hook that's strong, durable, big hook gap. You got a good keel in there that's going to keep this fly riding right, and it's a big enough fly that the marlin are going to find appetizing and track down. Hope this answered a lot of your question, guys, and get to tying. We're looking forward to having you down in Mag Bay.